The bus started at 6. Miles liked that part. The city still quiet, the streets almost empty, the sky that particular shade of dark blue that only exists for about 20 minutes before the sun decides to show up. He had been driving the 742 line for just over a year, long enough to know the route without thinking, long enough to recognize most of the regulars by face, even if he didn't know their names. The morning shift suited him. He had classes in the afternoon, engineering, second year, 3 more to go, and the early start meant he could be out by 2, showered and in his seat before the professor finished writing on the board. It wasn't the job he had planned, but it paid the tuition. And some mornings when the city was still waking up and the bus was almost empty and the light was just right, it didn't feel like a sacrifice at all. He had regulars. There was the older man who always sat in the front row and fell asleep before the 3rd stop. The woman with the 2 kids who never stopped moving. The teenager with the headphones so loud Miles could hear the music from the driver's seat. He knew their patterns. When they were running late, when they weren't coming, when something was off. That was the thing about driving the same route every day. You started to notice things, small things, the kind of things most people didn't bother paying attention to. Miles paid attention. It was, he had decided, the most useful thing about the job. Hannah appeared on a Monday. He almost didn't notice her. She got on at the Clement Street stop, the one at 742, right on schedule, paid the fare without looking up, and took a seat near the middle. She was carrying a simple bag over one shoulder, dark blazer, hair pulled back, the kind of outfit that said, "I need this to go well today." Miles pulled back into traffic. He forgot about her by the next stop. But she was there again on Tuesday. Same stop, same time, same bag, and on Wednesday and Thursday. By Friday, he noticed. The second week, Miles started paying closer attention, not in an obvious way. He was driving. He had a route to follow, stops to hit, a schedule to keep. But the mirror was right there, and the Clement Street stop was at 742, which was also when the traffic on 5th usually cleared, which meant he had approximately 90 seconds of relatively easy driving where his eyes didn't need to be completely fixed on the road. He wasn't staring. He was just aware. Monday she got on looking sharp. Bag over the shoulder, chin up, the kind of walk that said she had prepared for whatever was waiting at the other end of the line. Tuesday she got on looking tired. Not the regular kind of tired. The kind that comes from spending 8 hours somewhere you don't want to be. Wednesday, she sat down and looked out the window the entire ride without moving once. Miles didn't know what was going on, but something was. He learned small things without asking. She got off at Meridian Street every morning, where the business district started, but some mornings she got off 2 stops earlier, at Henderson, where the newer office buildings were. On those days, she walked faster and checked her phone more. Henderson days, he figured out after a while, were interview days. Meridian days were work days. And on the Meridian days, she sometimes looked out the window the whole ride with an expression that had nothing to do with the scenery. Miles understood that expression. He had worn it himself before he figured out the engineering degree. The expression of someone who is exactly where they are every day, but not where they want to be. He didn't say any of this out loud, but he noticed. On Thursday, she almost missed her stop. Miles saw it before she did. She was looking at her phone, probably checking something for wherever she was going, and the Meridian Street stop came up faster than usual because the light had been green all the way from 4th. He slowed down a little more than necessary. "Meridian," he said. Just that. She looked up, grabbed her bag, stood up fast. "Thank you," she said, already moving toward the door. She was off the bus in 4 seconds. Miles pulled back into traffic. He didn't think about it for the rest of the morning. That was what he told himself. Friday she got on and said, "Morning." Not to anyone in particular, just into the air, the way people sometimes do when they're trying to start the day on the right foot. Miles said, "Morning." She looked at him then, really looked for the first time, like she had just realized there was an actual person behind the wheel and not just a function of the bus. She nodded once, went to her seat. It was 3 words between them. 4, counting the one from Thursday. Miles drove the rest of the route thinking about what it meant that he was counting. He was 23 years old, studying engineering, driving a bus to pay for it. He didn't have time for this. He had the weekend to convince himself of that. By Monday morning, he wasn't convinced at all. The conversation started small. A comment about the rain, a question about whether the route had changed, a short exchange about the traffic on 5th that was always worse on Tuesdays for reasons nobody seemed to understand. Nothing significant, just the kind of words that fill the space between a door opening and a door closing. But they added up. Miles noticed that she always had the bag, but sometimes it looked heavier than other times. Not physically. The weight was somewhere else, in the way she held it, in the set of her shoulders when she sat down. He noticed that on Henderson days she sat closer to the window and went over something in her head. He could tell by the way her eyes moved, focused on nothing outside. On Meridian days she sometimes just stared. He didn't say any of this out loud, but he noticed. The first real conversation happened on a Wednesday. It had been raining since the night before, the kind of rain that makes the whole city look like it's been washed and wrung out and left to dry. Hannah got on at 7:42 soaking wet. She had an umbrella, but it had clearly lost the argument with the wind sometime around the corner of 5th and Clement. She stood at the top of the steps, umbrella dripping, hair coming loose, blazer darker than it was supposed to be. Miles looked at her. "Rough morning?" he asked. She looked down at herself, then back at him. "The umbrella gave up," she said. "I can see that. It was a cheap umbrella." "They always are," Miles said, "until you need them." She laughed, short, surprised, like she hadn't been expecting to. She shook the umbrella out the door, closed it, and went to her seat. It was maybe 30 seconds of conversation. Miles thought about it for the next 4 stops. After that, the 30 seconds became a minute. The minute became 2. It wasn't much. Miles still had a route to drive, and Hannah still got off at Meridian or Henderson and went wherever she was going. But the words between the door opening and the door closing got a little longer each time. He learned things. She worked at a marketing company, had been there for 2 years. She didn't say she was unhappy. She said the job was fine, which Miles understood meant the opposite. She was looking for something else, something that actually used what she had studied. The Henderson stops were for that. She had grown up in the city, daughter of a Japanese family that had been here for 2 generations. She liked early mornings, but not the reason she had to be up for them. She was trying. That was the main thing Miles understood. Whatever was happening, she was getting up every morning, putting on the blazer, picking up the bag, and getting on the bus. That took something. He didn't say that either, but he thought about it a lot. 3 weeks in, Hannah started sitting in the front row. Not every day, but enough that Miles noticed the pattern. On the harder mornings, when the bag looked heavier and the shoulders were tighter, she sat further back and looked out the window. On the better mornings, she sat up front and sometimes talked before he even had a chance to say anything. He liked the front row mornings better. He wasn't going to examine that too closely. One morning she got on and sat down and said, "I have an interview today, a real one, not just a screening call." Miles pulled into traffic. "What's the difference?" "A screening call is when they decide if you're worth their time. An interview is when you decide if they're worth yours." He thought about that for a second. "That's a good way to look at it." "I'm trying to believe it," she said. The bus reached the next stop. 3 people got on. The moment passed, but Miles kept thinking about that word, trying. She didn't get the job. Miles knew before she said anything. She got on the following Monday and sat in the back row, the furthest she had ever sat, and looked at her phone the whole ride without looking up once. He didn't say anything at first. At the third stop, when the bus was quieter, he said, "Front row's empty." She looked up. He kept his eyes on the road. After a moment, she picked up her bag and moved to the front. She still didn't say anything. Neither did he. But somewhere between the fourth and fifth stop, she said, "They went with someone with more experience." "That's what they always say," Miles said. "Is it true?" He thought about it. Sometimes it just means they didn't know what they were looking for until they saw something else. Hannah was quiet for a moment. "That's either very comforting or very depressing," she said. "Probably both," Miles said. She almost smiled. It was enough. The next morning she got on and said, "I have another one today." "Another interview?" "Another chance," she said. Like she had decided to call it something different. Miles liked that. The morning after that, she got on and said nothing, just sat in the front row and looked ahead at the road through the windshield, like she was the one driving and needed to concentrate. Miles let her have the silence. At the Meridian stop, she stood up, straightened her blazer, picked up the bag. "Hey," Miles said. She looked at him. "You've shown up every day for a month," he said. "That counts for something." She looked at him for a moment, really looked, the way she had that first Friday when she realized there was a person behind the wheel. "Thank you," she said, quietly, like she meant it. She stepped off the bus. Miles watched her go down the sidewalk, chin up, bag over her shoulder, blazer straight. He pulled back into traffic. He was smiling, and he didn't try to stop it. On Thursday, she wasn't there. Miles pulled up to the Clement Street stop at 7:42 exactly. The doors opened. 2 people got on. The older man who always fell asleep, a woman he didn't recognize, no Hannah. He waited the standard 30 seconds, then 10 more. The schedule could absorb 10 seconds if the traffic on 4th had been light. Nothing. He closed the doors and pulled back into traffic. He told himself it was fine. She had probably taken a different route, or left earlier or later. People changed their routines all the time. It didn't mean anything. He told himself that for the rest of the morning. By the time he finished his shift at 2 and walked to his first afternoon class, he had counted every stop on the route in his head and come back to Clement Street every single time. He sat down in the lecture hall. The professor started talking about structural load calculations. Miles thought about a simple bag and a blazer, and someone who called interviews chances. He didn't take a single note. That night he sat at his desk with a structural engineering textbook open in front of him and thought about what he would say, not in a planned way. He wasn't writing anything down. He was just letting it run through his head the way you do when something has been sitting there for too long and needs to move. He had been driving the 742 for a year. He had noticed a lot of passengers. He had said good morning to dozens of people and meant it approximately never. With Hannah, it was different, and he knew it, and he had been telling himself it wasn't for about 3 weeks now, and that was long enough. He thought about the umbrella, about front row mornings and back row mornings, about that counts for something, and the way she had looked at him after. He thought about what you do when the bus schedule doesn't leave room for the things that actually matter. He opened the desk drawer. There was a pen, a highlighter, his student ID, and a receipt from the coffee place near campus. He looked at the receipt for a long time. Then he put it back and closed the drawer. He had a better idea. Friday morning, before his shift started, Miles stopped at the flower stand near the depot. He didn't know much about flowers. He stood in front of the buckets for longer than he wanted to admit, trying to look like someone who knew what he was doing. The woman running the stand watched him for about 30 seconds before she said, Who's it for? Someone who's been having a hard month, Miles said. She looked at him for a moment. Then she reached into one of the buckets and pulled out a single yellow flower. Simple, bright, the kind that looked like it had decided to be cheerful regardless of the circumstances. This one, she said. It doesn't try too hard. Miles looked at it. Perfect. He paid. He walked back to the bus. He put the flower on the dashboard, carefully, stemmed down in the little groove where drivers sometimes kept pens. Then he started the engine. 742, Clement Street. He had about 40 minutes to change his mind. He didn't. The 742 pulled up to Clement Street at 7:42 exactly. The doors opened. The older man got on, a teenager with headphones, a woman with a grocery bag even though it was 7 in the morning. Miles kept his eyes forward. Then he heard it. The particular sound of someone running for a bus. The kind of run that means, please don't close those doors yet. He waited. Hannah came around the corner slightly out of breath, bag over her shoulder, blazer slightly crooked from the speed of getting there. She got on, paid, started to move toward her seat. Then she stopped. She had seen the flower. She stood there for a moment looking at it. A yellow flower on the dashboard of a city bus. Stemmed down in the pen groove, completely out of place and somehow exactly right. She looked at Miles. He was looking at the road ahead, or pretending to. Is that? She started. It doesn't try too hard, he said, quoting the woman from the flower stand without explaining why. I thought that was appropriate. Hannah looked at the flower again, then at him. Miles. There's a cafe on Henderson, he said, still looking at the road. It opens at 7. I finish my shift at 2. If you're not busy. He paused. I mean, if the interview goes well, we can celebrate. If it doesn't, the coffee is still good. The bus reached the next stop. Nobody got on. Hannah hadn't moved. You're supposed to be watching the road, she said. I am watching the road. You haven't looked at it in 30 seconds. The road, Miles said, is fine. Hannah picked up the flower. She held it for a moment, carefully, like it might change its mind. Henderson, she said. Henderson, he confirmed. What if I have another interview after? Then you come after the interview. What if it runs long? Hannah. Yeah? The cafe closes at 8. She looked at him. He looked at the road. The road was fine. Okay, she said. She put the flower carefully inside her bag, between 2 pages of a notebook she kept there, like something worth keeping. She went to the front row and sat down. At the Meridian stop, she stood up, straightened her blazer, picked up the bag with the flower inside it. Hey, she said. Miles looked at her in the mirror. Thank you. She paused. For all the mornings. She stepped off the bus. Miles watched her go down the sidewalk, chin up, bag over her shoulder, blazer straight. Same as always. That afternoon, after his shift, Miles walked to the cafe on Henderson. He got there at 2:15. He ordered a coffee and sat by the window. He watched the street outside, the people walking by, the offices emptying slowly as the afternoon moved on, the light changing the way it does in that particular hour between work and evening. At 3:40, the door opened. Hannah walked in. She still had the bag over her shoulder. The blazer was still straight, but her face was different, lighter, like something that had been tight for a long time had finally let go. She sat down across from him. The interview, Miles said, went well, she said. Really well. He nodded. He didn't say I told you so. He didn't say I knew it. He just said, good. What do you want to drink? She looked at the menu for a moment. Something that doesn't try too hard, she said. Miles smiled. The real one. "I know exactly what to order," he said. Outside, the city moved the way it always did in the late afternoon, slowly, without urgency, like it had nowhere to be. Inside the cafe on Henderson, two people sat across from each other for the first time, without a bus between them, without a schedule, without 30 seconds running out. The 742 was already on its next route. Some things move on schedule. Some things finally get the time they need.